Welcome back. And I just want to say congratulations for taking the personal resilience assessment. I know it takes courage to submit yourself to an assessment like this and get your results, and it just shows that you're taking the next step in becoming a more resilient person. I remember when I took the resilience assessment, it was some 25 years ago, and I can still remember my reaction to seeing my results for the first time. You see, I scored fairly high in most categories except for two: positivity and creativity. And as I looked at it, I just said, well, this can't be right. I'm not a negative person, and I feel like I'm fairly creative, and I just started thinking about it, and after a while, all these negative thoughts about the assessment and is it valid. And after a while of just sitting there and thinking through all this, I was like, I don't know. I'm not convinced that this assessment is worth my time. Well, looking back on that, I definitely see now that my reaction to my assessment results was telling me that I was two things. One, negative-minded, and two, that I had inflexible thought and lacked creativity. And so it was really interesting to see that my assessment results proved out in just my response to the assessment. The reason I share that with you today is likely you've already seen your assessment results, and you may have had some initial reaction to it. That's okay. It's understandable. Pay attention to your reaction. And what I'd like for you to do is just ask yourself the question, what can I learn from my resilience assessment results? You know, it's okay to have a negative reaction to the results we get. That happens all the time. But let's just push pause on our initial reaction and just ask the question, what can I learn? That's going to be our mantra as we walk through this. What can I learn so that I can become a more resilient person? So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to walk through a sample resilience assessment result. In this profile, it's a bit of a mixed profile that you'll see that we're going to pull up, and it's an example. Now, if you want to get more specific feedback on your assessment results, that'll be possible, and we'll kind of share with you how you can do that. But for most of us, I think as we walk through this sample report, you'll learn enough to be able to look at your assessment results and learn enough to put together an action plan. So let's get started. Before we look at a sample profile, let me explain what you're seeing on your numerical results. Each characteristic has a percentile score ranging from a low of 1 to a high of 99. Among all the people that have taken this assessment, this is where you score in that population. So if you have a score of 42, it means approximately 42% of respondents have scores falling below yours. You'll notice that you get an individual score for each characteristic. Your score is representative of your approach to challenges and situations that significantly disrupt your expectations rather than everyday life. All of the questions that you answered were tailored towards major challenges and major changes in life. Remember, each characteristic is a skill that can be developed with focus and effort on your part. So this assessment has been designed for personal development. This is for you to identify an area of struggle, a gap in your resilience, and begin to strengthen that area. So, as you work on your personal resilience, if you were to take this assessment several years from now and you make progress, you will see that reflected in an increase in your scores in the areas that you've worked in. Next, we're going to take a look at a sample report. This sample report is a mixed profile. What that means is that you'll see that this individual has scored above 50 in several areas and below 50 in several areas. So this person is likely to be comfortable with certain aspects of a challenge or change and a little uncomfortable with others. For example, they would tend to be very comfortable with connection and experimenting, and they would lead out with those resilience characteristics. You would likely see this person engaging a great deal with others to try to figure out what to do. And because they have a high score in experimenting, they tend to be very proactive, then they'll act rather quickly, maybe even rashly, given how high that score is relative to the others. Given that their next highest strength is structure, that may slow them down a bit as they put a plan in place and think through what they should do before they act. But because their priority score is low, their solution may be a little short-sighted because their creativity score is almost non-existent. Given their positivity and confidence scores are low, and the fact that they may be entering a challenge too quickly because their experimenting score is so high, if they run out of steam, or if they're faced with any adversity, it may be very difficult for them to recover because having a low positivity and a low confidence score means they probably have a low level of energy entering the major change or challenge. So you can see by looking at this example profile, there are a lot of considerations, and it can be a little complicated. But here's the thing to remember. As we have studied the personal resilience characteristics, and we have talked about them, the priority of the characteristics really flows from left to right. So, for most challenges in life, the most important personal resilience characteristic, you guessed it, is positivity. And then next is confidence. Because it's really important for us, as we said, to gather our energy before we decide what's most important, before we decide what the options are for how to do something, and then get organized and get going. So you can see it flows logically in that direction. And confidence and positivity are important because that's where we get our energy from. It's really hard to get going if we have not invested in those two areas of personal resilience. So, as you look at your profile results, I would like you to start from the left-hand side and find where you have a score below 50. That may be the area of struggle that you need to focus on. Let's take a few minutes and let's look at your resilience profile. Now you may be wondering, what's considered to be a high score and what's considered to be a low score? Well, since this is a percentile ranking, it's like a bell curve. So right at the middle is a score of 50. So anything that is a score higher than 50 is going to be considered to be a strength for you. Anything lower than a score of 50 is going to be considered to be an area of struggle, and maybe an area that you may want to spend some time developing. More on that later. So, as you look at your profile, the areas where you have a high score, areas where you've developed that resilience muscle over time, and there can be many reasons for that. And when you have a significant challenge, it's easier for you to engage that muscle because it's stronger, and it takes you less energy to engage it. On the contrary, where you have scores less than 50, it's an area that, your muscle's a little bit weaker, and it's just going to take way more energy for you to engage that resilience characteristic. It's not that you're completely devoid of it, it's just going to take you a lot more energy to engage it. And remember, we said anytime we're having a major change or challenge in our lives, we have limited energy. So the point of all this is to develop our resilience muscles so that we have strength across all areas. Now, I'm sure that you've been to a gym before, and you've probably walked around and you've seen different types of people. And there's the guy in the gym who typically has these enormous biceps and a big, huge chest and little tiny bird legs. Well, when it comes to resilience muscles, that's the person we don't want to be. We don't want to have a 99 score in biceps and chest and then have a 10 score for our legs. So we really want to have balance. And we really want to have balance across all of the resilience characteristics. And here's why. Because different situations, different challenges are going to require a different combination of resilience characteristics. And we really want to have balance across all of them so that we can pull on any of those muscles that we need and use it without taking up too much of our limited resources of energy. Also, what we want to do is we want regular practice. So, just like the guy in the gym who never does squats, we want to practice across all of our resilience muscles and develop them all equally. Now, you may be wondering, how does personality play into this? Because you may be looking at your assessment and see that there is some correlation between your personality and your assessment results. And yes, you are correct. You will find that there are correlations between different personality types and assessment results. For example, if you tend to be a very organized person in a personality assessment, that's going to show up in your resilience assessment as well, because your personality has that strength you've developed over time because it's just natural for you to work on that area, whereas you may have maybe a low creativity, maybe a little bit inflexible in thought, and that's too hard for you, so you avoid it. It's not natural for you to work on that. However, just a note, these are all skills. And just because your personality is tilted in one direction doesn't mean you can't work on one of these skills and develop it. Now, a little bit about developing our personal resilience characteristics. First off, you obviously need to spend some time reviewing your profile. You may want to go back and look at a couple of the videos that we did and pick up on a couple of points that were made earlier, just so you understand your profile a little bit better. So take some time reviewing it, take some time studying the information that we went over. Then, based on what you've seen and where you've had some lower scores, choose one, maybe two personal resilience characteristics to work on. And I would discourage you from doing more than that. And here's why. Because just as we talked about, determine what's most important right now and work on it, it's important to focus. And if you try to work on too many things, it's really hard to make any progress whatsoever. So focus on one, maybe two characteristics. And then build a plan of action to build your resilience muscles. We've kind of given you some very practical advice along the way. You may choose to do one of those things, but also after this video, you'll see that we're going to point you to many resources that you can tap into to help you put together a plan to build your resilience muscles that you need to work on. And then, of course, it's really important to get support. I would encourage you to share your assessment results with somebody close to you. That may be someone at home. It could be your supervisor at work. And sit down and talk through it. And I think just by doing that, what you'll find out is that person may give you some insights into yourself and reflect some things back to you that you haven't seen that could be very helpful for you. Also, if there's somebody in your life that you know that they have a strength that's an area of struggle for you, they can help you. So look for support from others. And then lastly, I just want to encourage you. The journey to becoming a more resilient person is a slow journey. It's not going to happen overnight. It's going to be small, steady progress, and that's what you're looking for. Well, as we close our time together, I want to recognize something. I know my approach to this personal resilience training has been practical and you might say somewhat academic in nature. But let's pause for a moment. And I just want to say that I understand that personal resilience is really deeply personal. And here's what I mean about that. In my life, what I've recognized is that I've either just come out of a period of trouble in my life, I'm currently in a period of trouble in my life, or trouble is coming. And since we're all people of faith here, our Savior, Jesus, has even told us that in this world we will have trouble. It's a fact. And so we really need to get ready and be ready when trouble comes. And not just for ourselves, but for all the people around us so that they can count on it as well. So I just want to encourage you, take the time to develop your personal resilience development plan and to work on it and stick with it. Because over time, you'll realize that you can become a very resilient person. And when trouble comes, you will be ready. And you'll be ready there not just to help yourself, but to help each person around you as well. So thank you for being with me, and I wish you the best.